Harley Race, Dick the Bruiser, the Von Erichs, King Kong Brody, Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, they're all here today on Wrestling at the Chase. Hello, I'm Larry Matysik, and no, this is not the Twilight Zone. Wrestling at the Chase never died. That style of wrestling with great athletes, a healthy dose of showmanship, and straightforward promotion never died. The television ratings were spectacular. The buildings were filled to capacity. And it was only yesterday, wasn't it? Wherever I go in St. Louis, even today, people still ask about Wrestling at the Chase. It brought the greatest professional wrestling in the country to St. Louis. It also brought together a great city, from the people in living rooms, in bowling alleys, in church basements, in hospitals. And it also brought together the wrestling world with the formation of the National Wrestling Alliance.
I approached Sam. I said, hey, I'm going out of my mind here. If we'll be partners. And I said, I'll do the wrestling and you take care of the business. When he put NWA together, why, it was a creative thing, and it was a masterstroke, actually, because that's what the wrestling actually needed at that time, needed some credibility. And because a lot of these people that were wrestling promoters were, had graduated from carnivals, and some of them never got out from under the tent, you know, they were still there, you know.
Still to come, interviews with the wrestlers, the referees, the announcers that made Wrestling at the Chase famous. But first, a tribute to the man who made it all possible, the incomparable promoter, Sam Muchnick.
He gave the people what he wanted and what they wanted, and he was the greatest entrepreneur I've ever met in my life.
I remember the first match in 1932 when I worked for Tom Peck, Ray Steele, and Jim McMillan. I remember Strangler Lewis and Jimmy Londas and Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers.
This is a sad moment because Sam's been a friend and a teacher for so long, and it's going to be a very different feeling not having him here on a day-to-day basis, but we know he's there if we need him in a pinch, and that does mean something. Sam Muchnick, thank you very much. We'll be back with more right after this. Wrestling can't exist without the promoter, and St. Louis was blessed with one of the greatest ever in Sam Muchnick, my friend, my teacher. Sam tied the whole package together and made it so unique in St. Louis. Sam Muchnick made a contribution to wrestling second to none.
I was the official physician for the wrestling matches, and when the wrestlers would come in and sit down there, and when they found out who I was, every one of them would say how it's such a pleasure to work in St. Louis with someone who had such high integrity.
He worked awful hard at his job, and he was very good at what he did. And he was the guy, he was the chair, he knew all these guys. And he knew what he had to do. People would rely on him for advice, he would give it. And Sam was just a thorough professional, which is the highest accolade I can pay.
He didn't want the wrestlers to touch the announcers. You leave them alone. The ring announcers, you let them alone. Keep your hands off the referees too. And, you know, and he would always say, I'm paying you to wrestle inside the ring, not outside the ring. So you stay inside.
I can always remember Sam when he was in the hallway or in the back room. Sam would say, now, you fellas are wrestling tonight. I don't want either one of you to touch any of these referees. I want my referees protected. And we were protected because Sam backed us all the way.
He told you what he expected, and there was nothing in between. You either did it his way, or you were out the door. And, you know, I guess I did it because he kept me on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate this honor, and I don't know how long I'll be physically able and mentally able to continue, but I'll try real hard to go for a long time. And I want to say I did a little figuring before this program, and I figured out that more than 200 million people have watched this program, this wrestling program, over the span of 20 years, and we promoted 1,040 Wrestling at the Chase. Thank you very much.
And he was one guy that never missed telling you what a good job you did when the bout was over.
Sam was Mr. Wrestling in his time. He made the sport, and I don't think there's too many people that would say elsewise.
Sam was one of the few promoters that was respected by everybody across the board.
Sam was an honest man. Sam was the greatest guy to work for. And I never seen Sam. I guess sometimes he got hollered in the collar, but he would do it with that little smile, like, I don't think you ought to do it that way, Mickey, or Larry, I think you ought to talk more about this. Sam, to me, I always called him my godfather, because he really took care of me.
I think the most important legacy that he left is his honesty. In fact, someone had given me an article after he died that someone had written that was on the internet, and he talked about the one thing my father was the honest wrestling promoter.
Sam Muchnick had been promoting wrestling in St. Louis since 1945, but it was not until he partnered with Harold Koppler and his new television station, KPLR, that the idea for Wrestling at the Chase began to blossom.
KPLR was the fourth independent to sign on in the United States. Television was different at the time. We couldn't go out and buy syndicated shows. We had to rely on local creativity to come up with a programming schedule that you could put on the air for 18 hours a day. So we did a lot of unusual things. If I recall the story, was my father and Sam were on an airplane together, and they got into a discussion about wrestling, and then the fact that it might be a very interesting event. My dad was another genius as far as entertainment was concerned. Had a sense that this could work as an event, and both him and Sam pioneered something very new and very original.
It was a risk that Harold Koppler had to take. It was a risk that Sam Muchnick had to take, and to combine that with the coverage, and that's why they had a hit.
Another great thing that is hard to understand in today's world. I don't think there ever was a formal contract between my father and Sam. It was written down on a piece of paper, a doily that they had on the airplane. There was no formal contract. They shook hands and they honored that.
Harold was he was getting it going and pretty much fighting for his life. And when they came up with this idea, it was word of mouth. And then they found out that, hey, the cameramen are just as good as the other guys, if not better. And this guy, and it was not KPLR was not a station that was being run with Polaroid cameras. These were thorough professionals, and we were getting the job done. And we had, and I say this with some degree of humility, we had a hit show on our hands.
Wrestling virtually dominated our Sunday mornings. The ratings matched, believe it or not, NFL football.
I thought that Wrestling at the Chase showed that KPLR was here to stay.
Obviously, KPLR was here to stay for over 40 years now. All of the pieces were falling into place. A great promoter, a broadcaster who wanted original local programming. The big question was where to do the show. Fortunately, Harold Koppler owned the Chase Hotel and the beautiful Khorassan Room. Wrestling from the Khorassan Room. It set a standard unmatched anywhere in the wrestling world.
First of all, the fact that you were in the Khorassan Room immediately put you a cut above any other place in the entire country. I mean, because we would have wrestlers coming from no-name Nebraska in a high school gym on bleachers or whatever, putting on a show, or maybe it would be outdoors at a drive-in theater. Now all of a sudden, here they come in to the Chase Hotel, the premier hotel in St. Louis.
Now, let's go to ringside and Joe Garagiola.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to Wrestling at the Chase. Yes, sir, wall to wall, and boy, tonight we're going to have them all over this place.
Oh, it was a wonderful experience to walk into a civilized place, because some of the down the road little tank towns, that you wrestle, the ring is in bad shape, and they maybe have a 10-watt bulb over the ring or something like that. And the Khorassan Room was the elite, and that was the hallmark for the entire world.
And look at here. And the crowd loves it.
The Khorassan Room was just a fantastic place to be. I mean, everybody was just sitting at tables, relaxing.
I have to say this, Wrestling at the Chase had a great impact on all the fans because they had a great building to come see it in, and they seen great wrestlers come there and wrestle. They didn't have a place where was bad, but it was a high-class building. And that's what made wrestling so great at the Chase.
I mean, the Chase Hotel, when I was growing up, we used to drive by here and wish that we would win a contest or have enough money to go into the Chase Hotel.
Oh, that was wall-to-wall wrestling. I mean, that was the tops. That was your Waldorf Astoria. I mean, that was great. And here these guys coming in from, how would you say, that smelly dressing room and an auditorium and a coliseum, and now they got class. They're serving food. They got tablecloths on the table, and they're up there beating each other up.
You're thinking about walking out into just an ordinary hall to wrestle, and you're walking out into fine dining, people in tuxedos and evening gowns and all sitting around the ring, and you're wondering, what in God's name am I doing here?
And I thought, what a concept. This is so different than, I mean, wrestling and the Khorassan Room, but I tell you, it turned out to be an event.
Walking into a room that seated probably 800-900 people, all dressed in evening attire, sitting there sipping champagne. If that doesn't take you back to the Roman gladiator days.
Where else but the Khorassan Room? It was perfect. It was gorgeous. It was unique. Up next, why wrestling at the Chase could only have happened in St. Louis, and all of the great action you never forgot. I'll revisit it with you.
Now you can use this as a pin too, though, really, right?
Right. Well, if I want to use it as a pin, I'll grab you from here.
Yeah.
And I'll just roll you straight back like. Yes. Ask him.
Do you give up? I gave up a long time ago. We still got time. Oh!
When you talk about St. Louis, there are so many great things you can refer to. But in wrestling, St. Louis is the capital. Every wrestler wanted to come to St. Louis, and getting a main event in St. Louis, being on Wrestling at the Chase, could make a huge difference in any wrestler's career.
St. Louis was like the wrestling capital of the United States for certain, and the world, because there was not a city anywhere in the world that had access to that kind of talent every time it ran.
Everybody, all the wrestlers around the world wanted to be booked in St. Louis. That was their dream. I really want to wrestle in St. Louis.
Everybody that I felt like came here, you know, it developed that aura, that thing, you know, like St. Louis. You know, it was almost like it was considered one of the meccas of wrestling in that time. And when you came to St. Louis, you know, you were always going to put your best foot forward. You're going to do the absolute best job you could.
St. Louis had all the right people all the time. It was a magical city, and Sam kind of kept it that way.
St. Louis was one of those few places where wrestling was more respected for what it really is. You know, I don't know why. Maybe it's Sam. You know, maybe because of Sam's love and heart and the way he presented the business to the people here in St. Louis.
The fact that St. Louis was a catalyst for wrestling, and St. Louis fans, believe it or not, helped make this whole phenomena of wrestling happen.
There was so many great fans that we had. You know, they line up at 10 o'clock in the morning to let them in for the 12 o'clock taping. And they'd be out there lined up, and you say, well, you're crazy, you know. But that's the kind of fans that we had here in St. Louis. They were just great fans.
If you wrestled at the Chase Hotel or wrestled at Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, that wrestling is what it is if the boxers fight in Madison Square Garden. Wrestling is it as far as St. Louis goes. It's one of the finest wrestling cities in the country, in fact, the world. The fans here, Larry, are outstanding. As much as I don't care too much for them, they are. You. Well, they always boo me, and I don't care, but I still like the fans in St. Louis.
St. Louis was unique. St. Louis was a city that was a territory. It was an entity of all its own. And because all of the big names from all of those other territories would come to St. Louis. And I mean, St. Louis would get the cream of the crop from the entire country.
In the tradition of St. Louis, I'm going back to Sam Muchnick, the greatest promoter of all time. I'm going to Ed Strangler Lewis, Lou Thesz, Pat O'Connor, Kaniski, the Funks, the Frisco's Harley race, and now, woo!
Ric Flair.
Ric Flair.
It was born here, it was bred here, is once again something you don't hear a lot about, but if this town had never accepted wrestling the way they accepted it, it might never have been the national success it's been in today's world.
As I traveled around, people said, "Did you wrestle in St. Louis?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I wish I could." You know, that kind of thing. And it had a great image. And we would all like to perpetuate that or try to regain it, is what I should say.
When you mention the name St. Louis in context as in wrestling, whether it's here or in Tokyo, Japan, it is the city in the world still today that just mention the name when you're talking in wrestling is the wrestling city of the world.
And now it comes time, I guess, and Ted DiBiase pins Harley Race.
I lost the fall, and Mickey says, and we have a new world heavyweight champion.
I was so worked up in the match. I thought it was the greatest match I ever saw. Man, I ran, jumped in the ring. I said, in 29 minutes and 14 seconds, the new world's heavyweight wrestling champion, Ted DiBiase. Race is laying on a canvas, and he's going, "No, no, no." And I'm saying to myself, "What do you mean?" To my son, "No, no, he beat you."
Well, I guess no one bothered to tell Mickey that you couldn't lose the title in a tag team, but
Sam Muchnick, I know what he was doing in the back room, in the control room. He's going crazy. So when he's saying, "No, no, no," I figured I better get out of here because Race might get up and let me have it. So I got out and I listened to you say, and this was one of the outstanding matches of wrestling at the Chase. And Mickey got so worked up on that he forgot that this was not a championship match. I said, "Oh, Mick, you goof."
And I want to thank Mickey right now for declaring me the world champion. Yeah, I will never, ever forget that. That was so funny. And that was the springboard. It was that tag team match on the television show that more than anything else set up that main event.
But it turned out all right because I didn't know that was a promo for the next big bout at the Keel. Sold out.
it made for one hell of an exciting hour of TV.
What those thousands of fans tuning in every weekend to Wrestling at the Chase did not realize was they were helping us, those of us behind the scenes in the promotion, create some magical personal moments.
I have a lot of people today. Hey, I remember you on Wrestling at the Chase. I had that right now. You can go down, I go to a ball game or something like that, and somebody will run. I remember you. That's a celebrity part, I guess you would say. And everybody's got a little ham in it, and I got a big one.
This is a crazy, haphazard life, and if you learn to relax with it and get some joy out of it, it's a winner.
All of a sudden you get on TV, and this was in a small country town in New Haven. And, I was a big thing there all of a sudden. Here's the referee, referee Lee Warren. And it really helped out on that part.
But still today, it's there every time we go out. We can leave here now and drive up the street here, and I'll guarantee you, if we walk into any one of those businesses, before we walk out, somebody's going to ask me about Wrestling at the Chase.
I always loved coming here. Always loved coming here because I always knew that I was going to be not only liked and loved by the fans, because I certainly was, but